my favorite subject, maximizing your tips. Now, I believe that every single trip is a tip opportunity. I believe you can get a tip from the lowest rated passenger to the highest rated passenger, the shortest trip to the longest trip. Every single trip, you have the potential to earn a tip. But the truth is this: some trips, some passengers tip more than others. And the key for us is to find a way to come up with a strategy to maximize the potential for us to receive a tip. So, for example, a college student going to a bar on a Friday night, what would she want? She wants safe transportation, but if it's late at night, she's probably wanting to have some fun. So have a music playlist that's designed for her entertainment. Whereas if you're doing a 10 o'clock in the afternoon trip with an elderly person, what do they want? They probably just want kindness and you being courteous, opening the door for them, listening to whatever story that they want to share with you over their many decades of life. Whatever it is, that's how you're going to earn a tip with that particular person. Here's what I've learned over the last 11,000 almost trips. 5-star passengers tip more than a 4.5 passenger. People that reserve an Uber or a Lyft will tip more likely than a person that just orders one spontaneously. Long trips tip more than short trips. Comfort trips tip more than basic trips. A black trip would tip more than a basic trip. People that pay for priority or pet or teen, or they pay for an additional feature, they're more likely to tip. People going to and from the airport, they tip. A trip where you help the person with packages or their groceries or whatever it might be, if you go out of your way to help a passenger, they're more likely to tip. Now, I have a little bit of math to show you on this. Back in April, I took 151 rides in a 1-week time period, and I measured as much as I possibly can about the rides, why people did what they did, the ratings, whatever it is. And here's what I learned. Out of my 151 trips, 51 of them were 5-star passengers, and 29 of them tipped me. So 57% of my 5-star passengers tipped. My 4.9 to 5.0 passengers, they tipped about 29% of the time. Then anybody else that was basically 4.8 or less, I had 45 of them, only 10 of them tipped for a 22% ratio. What does that basically mean? That means out of my 151 trips, 55 tipped me 36% of the time. That makes sense. I also noticed a trend with the distance of the trip. The longer the trip, the more likely they were to tip me. So a super short trip, while I do get tips on those super short trips that are less than 5 minutes, they only tip me a quarter of the time. Whereas the longer trips tip me almost every single time. And as you could see, during this week, almost all of my rides were basic UberX trips. However, I did get 7 reservations and 5 of them tipped me. I had 6 Uber Comfort rides and half of them tipped me. And I had 2 Uber Priority rides and half of them tipped me. So again, I want to reiterate, yes, a 4.5 passenger can tip, and they might just do that. But we're talking about the law of large numbers, statistics. Statistically speaking, you're more likely to get a tip on a long trip that's a reservation with a 5-star passenger that has a pet and that's going to the airport, as opposed to a 4.5 rated passenger on a 5-minute trip around town in the middle of the day. That's just the statistics behind it. So what you can do is, if you're interested in earning more in tips, first things first, take the trips that are more likely to tip you. Of course, you need to be a professional driver to earn tips. The reality is your car needs to be clean and smell nice. You need to drive smoothly. Set the radio to the music that you think that the passenger might like. And if they want to change the temperature, you can change that too. Know your city, be ready to entertain, help with the bags. And yeah, every now and then, maybe like on Halloween, if you want to have candies, that's great. Definitely have some charging cables. But for the most part, a clean car, professional driver, driving smoothly, that's how you're going to get more tips. One of the things that you're going to hear from a lot of expert drivers is to read the room. Another way I like to say that, as opposed to an ambiguous kind of metaphor, tactically speaking, you should listen more than you speak as a rideshare driver. The passenger, if they want to talk to you, they'll talk and you can listen. And if you ask a question, they'll talk more. But if you ask a question, you get a one-word answer and they don't want to talk, that's how you read the room. The thing is this, we can't see the passenger when we're talking to them. So we can't read body language. Quite frankly, a lot of the times, I don't even know if they're on their phone when they're talking to me or looking out the window, but they can see me. They can see my body language when I'm driving. So it's really hard to talk to a passenger to some extent. Doesn't mean I don't, and nor do you. I mean, we all talk, but to read the room, the best thing you can do is listen more than speak. And I have this rule where I always try to end my portion of the conversation with a question. So let me give you an example. The passenger might say something like, "Where are you from?" And I'll say, "I'm from Hawaii. Where are you from?" You see how I quickly did that? I turned it back onto them. Yeah, I gave them a little nugget of information. That's kind of fun. It's Hawaii. It might spark a future conversation or further the conversation. But I quickly turned it back onto them. Where are you from? And they might say some place like, I don't know, "I'm from New Jersey." Oh, really? Where in New Jersey are you from? Just keep asking questions and be curious. Listen. They're going to tell you things. Be entertained by the things that they're telling you. And if they don't want to talk, just sit there quietly. But listen more than you speak. Maybe it's because I hang out in Reddit threads or Facebook groups or over on X, but quite frankly, I know a lot of us drivers, we get disgruntled. I do. I know I do. It's, we feel like passengers are going to take advantage of us. But I really encourage you to take a step back if you want to earn tips and go over and above with customer service. Say things like, "My pleasure." So if a passenger says, "Hey, can you help me with these grocery bags?" "My pleasure." "Can I roll the window down?" "My pleasure." I personally don't like it when the passenger rolls the window down, but they're only going to be in my car for 5 minutes or maybe an hour. I don't know. It's a short period of time. Just be kind and offer great customer service. Here's one that blows the mind of a lot of my other fellow drivers. When a passenger wants to add a stop, "Hey, my pleasure." You know what? In fact, that's on the way. You don't even have to add a stop. If you're going to run in there quickly, I'll just stop for you. "My pleasure." I'm trying my best to set up an environment with the passenger that makes them feel special. A clean car, professional driving, "my pleasure." All those things really help to earn more tips. But there's one golden nugget of advice that I got when I first started driving. I want to say I saw it on Harry's channel over at the rideshare guy. I can't remember, but I watched a YouTube video, and the guy said this: "Ask for a review." and it makes sense. Let me explain the situation to you. A passenger orders a ride. Great. Once they pay for that ride, they might watch to see when you're going to show up, but as soon as you show up, they're turning off the Uber or Lyft app and they're going to go back into their phone to surf TikTok or do whatever they're going to do. They're going to talk to you. They're focused on where they're going. The next time they plan on going back into those apps is when they get their next ride. Now, it's hard for them to tip if they're not going back into the app. So if we ask for a rating and a review or something like that, it incentivizes them to go back into the app. It assigns them a little bit of a task, maybe. So about 2 minutes before my ride ends, on my way to the destination, I'll say something like this. Hey, we're almost there. It's really lovely meeting you. Before we arrive, can you do me a favor? Can you go back into the app and leave me a review? You know, those stars, those positive ratings, they really help, and I really appreciate it. And I can sometimes see them open their phone back up. Now, that doesn't mean I'm guaranteed a tip. In fact, none of these things that we're talking about guarantees a tip. All I'm trying to do is set up a situation where I can maximize my tips. And like I said, about 4 out of every 10 of my passengers tips. And that's because I prioritize all of these things. So if you look at every single trip as a tip opportunity, you're going to treat that passenger with the respect, right, and the customer service in a way to facilitate getting a tip.